Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Submariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the Macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed. Chris, it's good to be back with you, my friend, talking comic books and having a brief moment of joy in the tire fire that is 2020.
I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about how on January 1st, 2020, social media was just full of people who were excited, enthusiastic about entering the roaring 20s and how it was going to be different now. We were going to turn things around.
Oh, it's roaring all right.
It's roaring all right. Well, people like our friend Jack Haringa are commonly referred to as pedantic. And pedants would tend to remind us that technically the 20s don't begin until January 1st, 2021. So I'm going to hold on to that, Brian. I'm going to go with the pedants right now and say that this is just the end of the 2010s. And the roaring 20s will begin on January 1st. Actually, with any luck, January 20th, 2021, but we'll see.
I will go with that too. You know, it's funny you should bring that up. I was just talking about that with my ex-wife this morning. I was over there having coffee with her while my 12-year-old was finishing his breakfast and getting ready to come over here. And I told her, I specifically remember when I realized that 2020 was going to be unlike any other year in my 52 years on this planet. And I came up for a weekend earlier this year to visit you and our friend Joe Hill and a couple other folks. And on the train ride home, it started, the pandemic was just starting, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I realized, this year is going to be a crap fest. And boy, has it turned out to be one. But I still think that recording this show with you every week is one of the high points of every week, because for 45 minutes or an hour, we get to go back to the 70s when I'm sure things were bad then, but we didn't know it because we read these comics.
Right, because we didn't know it. And for the duration of reading these comics, and actually the other thing I was thinking about doing this show, by the way, I realized that I may not have all of Man-Thing, so I'm gonna have to look and see what I've got. I've got the first two collections, but the third one isn't coming out till I'm not sure when.
I can hook you up.
All right, so we'll talk. But in any case, I was thinking about the fact that, I'm looking forward to reading Man-Thing, but that without this show, I probably woun't be rereading these comics all the time.
Right.
And so it really is. You're 100% right. Like, I just finished reading All the Light We Cannot See, which is an extraordinary novel. I think it won the Pulitzer Prize. It's a fantastic, amazing work of literature. And I don't say that sarcastically. It's amazing. It's beautiful. But I still want to read my supervillain team up number 12 with Dr. Doom and the sinister Red Skull.
Right.
So, I just need that in my life. So here we are.
I agree. Well, this week, folks, we come to a turning point in our coverage of Marvel's supervillain team up. What began at the very start of this series, Namor and Doom, and Doom's promise to Namor to restore the comatose Atlanteans, it all comes to a head. Today we're covering Supervillain Team Up issues 12 and 13. We pick up exactly where we left off last last week's episode. Bill Mantlo doing the writing, Bob Hall doing the art, Don Perlin on inks. And we still have the team up of the century with Dr. Doom, Captain America, Namor, and the Shroud all agreeing that Nazis should always be punched.
And who can argue? The creative team on this issue is boisterous Bill Mantlo, Batlin Bob Hall, and Whirlin Don Perlin, although the editors seem to be unsure about Whirlin as the appellation for Don Perlin because it's in a question mark. It's got a question mark beside it, I should say. So that is our creative team. And we're going to, in the next issue that we cover today, we're going to see the return to this show of a friend of yours, Brian.
That's right. That's right.
We go on. So we catch people back up to where we are. Christoph, the deposed crown prince of Latveria, is unconscious. Captain America is in Latveria. Doom, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but are they all? No, they're headed to the moon. Doom and the Shroud.
Doom and the Shroud, yeah. Doom and the Shroud have taken off from Latveria to the moon, whereas you'll remember the Red Skull has a base, and he's captured Dr. Doom's hypno ray, and he's about to fire it in half an hour and enslave humanity. So we see. But
it definitely takes less than half an hour to get to the moon.
Exactly. So we see, Doom piloting this spaceship. The Shroud is suiting up in an astronaut suit, which is very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no. Wait a minute. I'm going to fight you on this. It's not cool. It's fucking stupid.
No, I love that he has the Shroud costume on underneath.
No. The Shroud. We don't usually argue on this show, but you are wrong, my friend. The Shroud is a character who belongs in the shadows. He belongs firmly grounded on Earth. And I have this reaction every time I see characters. Okay, I'm fine with it. It's silly, whatever. But it's like when you see Hawkeye in a spacesuit floating in space to fight the Kree or something. It's like, it's freaking Hawkeye. He needs to be on the ground. Well, how he can't shoot an arrow in space. Well, it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay. When you put it in those terms, I'll agree with you because
the Shroud is blind, and he's floating in space, and he's blind, and he says, "There she blows, Doc, big, bright, and deadly." Not only can he not tell it's bright, he can't see it, Brian.
I'm going to say that it's the cosmic rays, the radiation coming off of it. That's what he sees.
That's your no prize?
That's my no prize. I do love the interplay here between Captain America and Doom, though. Doom is fully in charge at this point, people. If this is the new Avengers, Doom is the leader. And Captain America is second fiddle. Cap calls in on the intercom. He says, Captain America to Doom ship, do you read me? And Doom's like, of course I read you, you dolt. I built this thing. We see that, Rudolfo is not dead. He's being carried away, and Cap would have words with Namor. He wants to know why his old ally is refusing to help. And Namor says, basically he says, fuck you surface people. I've had it with you. The only thing I care about is Doom honoring his word and restoring my subjects.
Right. Exactly. Which, again, that is Namor. I mean, that's the way the character should be played. And I hope that on the chance that he does appear in, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that this is how he's played.
Agreed.
Whatever he's doing for the sake of his people, and that's it. You know. I also find really interesting in this and the next issue that you really get the sense that Doom is a total scumbag. Obviously, he's a bastard, but he's not a liar.
No, he's a man of honor. I will go to the wall fighting for that. Doom has his own moral compass. Is he a villain? Absolutely. I'm not, he's not even an anti-hero. He's straight up a supervillain. Okay. Right. But that being said, he has a moral compass. He doesn't want to enslave the world. He wants to rule the world simply because he knows the world will be a better place with him in charge.
This sounds so familiar, Brian. But I have to say that I would be comfortable being in charge myself.
Well, careful, because that's the slope that Dr. Doom went down. Anyway, he decides that the Shroud is going to eject from the ship and take care of the hypno ray. So that's the Shroud's job. His job is to do that. And Doom tells Shroud, you are Earth's last hope should I fail. And I suspect that it took a lot for Dr. Doom to admit that to a lesser man such as the Shroud.
Yeah, from his perspective. Well, then I love this scene with the Red Skull and one of his minions. This guy, I feel like it must be this guy's first week on the job. Because the Skull is laying out his plan, what he intends to do this time. He is ready for Dr. Doom. He's ready for Captain America. And one of his minions says, but Herr Skull, if you should lose, and the sort of, Aryan guy standing behind the Skull immediately jumps in. Lose? Curb your witless tongue, Wilhelm. The Red Skull can never lose. So, of course, and the Red Skull says, yes, that's true. But here's a list of all the times I've lost to Captain America. And then he's like, but Doom is a fool, but you, Wilhelm, are a greater fool, for you have dared to question the infallibility of the Red Skull. And of course, he uses gas to kill Wilhelm right there. And Wilhelm, his face, it's like the Joker gas, but it's the Red Skull gas instead.
Right.
Don't you think this has to be Wilhelm's first week on the job?
It has to be. And his last week on the job, unfortunately.
Well, not unfortunately, he's a Nazi. So
this next part, I have problems with. Okay, Dr. Doom is the smartest guy in the room. Okay, and he built this spaceship. Okay, the Red Skull fires hunter missiles armed with multi-purpose warheads at the spaceship. And Doom says, this, my fastest ship, carries no defenses except for those built into my armor. What?
Well, you're aware of this. In order for the ship to be the fastest it can be, it has to be the lightest it can be.
Right. But he's Dr. Doom. He can come up with something light. I don't buy that.
Well, this is just a convenient way for Mantlo to get Doom out of the ship. So he leads the hunter missiles into a crash. He ejects from his own ship. But of course, his armor can seal itself. It has an independent oxygen supply, and we're learning he has a jetpack.
That's right.
Under his cape.
That's right.
Which is conveniently there.
Because much like the son of Satan's nether trident, exactly. Dr. Doom's armor can do whatever the writer needs it to do.
Exactly.
Speaking of armor, Chris, my favorite part of this issue is we see here in the transition the Red Skull's Nazi spacesuit.
Yes. Yeah. The Red Skull it looks like an antique diving costume. But it is indeed a spacesuit with a giant swastika on the chest.
Yep.
And then he has a space sled ship of some kind that he rides out to meet Doom on the field of battle on the moon.
That's right.
It's fun. I mean, it's big, silly fun.
It is. And we need some big, silly fun. And while Doom and the Skull are battling it out, the Shroud is up there floating around in outer space,
trying to destroy the weapon that's floating in space, this satellite gun, and that's going to the hypno ray that's going to take over the world. And here's my next favorite part, which is the Shroud, even though he's in a spacesuit, somehow manages to produce his own version of a batarang, his
Right.
boomerang weapon that's tied to a tether.
It's
That
called
is
the Magna-Rang.
Magna-Rang because it's magnetic. So it's a magnetic boomerang, which he succeeds in throwing in outer space.
That's right.
Do we need to discuss how physics demands that this is completely impossible?
We do not, because it's Bronze Age Marvel, baby.
Okay, all right, good.
What I love about this is he gives you an answer to your question at the start of this show. Though I am blind, my mystic senses reveal to me things normal vision could not.
There you go. So his mystic senses are much like Damon Hellstrom's Nether Trident. Got it.
That's
Check.
right. That's right. So he's trying to disarm the hypno ray, and what he does,
I feel like this is going to be you tonight, Mary. My mystic senses detect that I need a whiskey. Can you grab me one? Mary, my mystic senses detect that we need to watch something other than this movie.
Well, I if so, I hope I'm smarter about it than the Shroud, because you're right about him not belonging in space. Because what he succeeds in doing, dear listeners, is arming the hypno ray early.
Whoops. Oh, all right. Well, in any case, we get the continuing battle in space between Doom and the Red Skull. The Skull thinks that Doom is defenseless, but of course, Doom thinks, but if he thinks me defenseless, he does not know Doom. The Red Skull thinks that Doom is afraid of him. I mean, this is the clash. We thought that Namor and Doom was the clash of egos. This is the clash of egos to end all clashes.
Right.
Yeah.
Doom tricks the Red Skull into bounding into a minefield on the moon. The mines explode, shattering the Skull's reserve oxygen tanks and causing hairline fissures to form in his helmet. And how does Doom react to this, Chris?
He laughs his metal-clad butt off.
That's right.
So Captain America arrives just in time to use a tractor beam to beam the Shroud aboard. And, basically realizes at that point, I think, that the Shroud is blind. But he says, let's see, he's breathing, but that's about it. What could have happened to him unless in an attempt to swing the muzzle of that, again, this is like, we don't know exactly how this happened, so let's explain it. Swing the muzzle of that hellish ray away from Earth. There's no telling what those brain-numbing rays have done to his sanity. There you go.
And I wonder if this is why we didn't see the Shroud for a while after this.
I just think it's, it's a matter of whether you care about the character.
Yeah.
I think it's like, we love this character, and if we had the opportunity, we'd love to write him. But you have, there are so many characters to choose from.
Right. I think he shows up next in Bronze Age Spider-Woman.
Yes, and he's actually great in Spider-Woman.
He is. He's fantastic in Spider-Woman.
Yep, great character. And in fact, what's interesting is we should really do that run at some point, because that Spider-Woman run, and I know we're getting off on a tangent again, but that Spider-Woman run, it includes the Shroud, it includes Tigra. I'm trying to think of somebody else in there too that's great.
Werewolf by Night.
But I'm saying sort of as a regular, you see the Shroud on a regular basis, and Tigra quite a bit in that.
Right.
It's great stuff. But anyway, so you keep having the battle of these two. And then, by the way, there's Dr. Doom gets a slice in his armor. It's decompressing. He has instants only to act as the oxygen leaves his suit. But fortunately, Brian, the glove of his armor has a freeze unit.
That's right.
With which he seals up his armor.
So then, once again, getting the upper hand on the Red Skull, Doom sets off an avalanche on the moon, and the Skull is pinned beneath boulders. Now, keep in mind, his helmet is cracking, He's decompressing. He's losing oxygen. Now he's pinned under boulders.
Yeah.
And his fellow Nazis come running out, and the Skull is certain that they will save him. But what happens, Chris?
Dr. Doom turns on them and says, "Hear me, your master is defeated. Will you join him in death?" and the Skull's minions turn around and say, "No, Herr Doctor, we are yours to command." So as soon as they realize that the Skull is defeated, there's no way they can beat Doom. They're like, "No, you're good. Carry on."
Yep.
And then Doom turns his back on the Skull as well. He doesn't try to finish him off because he's now defeated.
That's right.
I think that's interesting too, because it's like, here's a moment where the Skull should die. And Marvel in this era was famous for doing things like this, where they leave a situation unresolved. So, I'm sure it wasn't years, but in some cases in those days, it would be years before you knew what happened to that character next.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, we carry on to Supervillain Team Up number 13, back to Dr. Doom and the Savage Submariner. And the writer-artist team here is Bill Mantlo and your buddy Keith Giffen with Don Perlin on inks.
Yep, that's right. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I'm here. Had a weird echo here in Skype for a second, so I was fooling around with it. But yeah, Keith and Bill, and I actually talked to Keith about this the other day because I knew it was coming up. He remembers this one. He doesn't remember which of them did more of the story, but he said he remembered that he was happy to be doing Namor again. That's always been one of his favorites to draw.
Yeah. Well, what I found really interesting about this is that this is a huge turning point for the Submariner in the comics. That he had his regular series at this time.
Yep.
And yet this is a massive turning point in his continuity. And it happens not in his own comic, but in Supervillain Team Up.
Actually, this was after they had canceled Submariner.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then
so this was the wrap up. That storyline began in his own comic, but they had then canceled his comic, so it got wrapped up here.
Gotcha. All right, my mistake.
That's okay.
You know what? Unlike Dr. Doom, I'm not infallible.
I should also mention in talking to Keith, as we talked about on the show before, I am getting into collecting original comic art, and I told him, I said, I'd love to buy something from Supervillain Team Up or Defenders or one of your Commandees, something I had when I was a kid. Do you know any dealers that still have any of that stuff? Because I know Keith doesn't keep his originals. And he said, yeah. And then he told me what those dealers were going to want for those.
Oh, my God.
I got into the collecting original art too late, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I don't have a lot of it, and most of it is art that Gene Colan did for the Blade one shot that I wrote for him. But yeah, Gene, like, those pages aren't even that expensive, to be honest, which is amazing to me. Even, Gene Colan pages from other things are just like, I'm like, how is that even possible? So,
right.
Of course, that might have changed in the last couple of years.
Maybe.
But I'm happy to say that the one original page of Tomb of Dracula that I have, I bought from Gene. It was the first time I ever bought original art. I bought it from Gene and had him sign it for me, and I've got it. I should take a picture of that and post it.
Yeah,
talking about that. But Tomb of Dracula we should cover. I know someday we won't live long enough to cover all the things we want to cover.
Well, we'll get to as many as we can. So yeah, we open with Namor and Doom under the ocean, heading to Atlantis. And I guess, Chris, Dr. Doom is going to keep his word. Namor's wondering that same thing.
Yeah, well, and it is the curious thing here that, they're on their way for no reason other than that Doom promised that he would find a way to wake all of the citizens of Atlantis, Namor's subjects, from the weird hibernation that they have been trapped in for a very, very long time at this point.
But
when they get there, Atlantis has already been taken over. And it's been taken over by this weird sort of ragtag bunch of Atlanteans, humans, enemies of the Submariner, all under the command of whom, Brian? It's a quiz.
Warlord Krang.
The Warlord Krang. And the weird thing about the Warlord Krang is he might as well just be a Tuma.
That's right. Now, Krang appeared in an earlier issue of Supervillain Team Up, did he not? Or am I thinking about the Defenders?
I think you're thinking of a Defenders.
All right. I know we've had Krang on this show before, like as a guest. Yeah, we've had Krang here in the studio. But yeah, Krang is basically he's a stand-in for Atuma.
Right.
You know, that's what it comes down to.
Well, I think it's also like, hey, we've had too much Atuma, so now let's move on to Warlord Krang.
Right.
And he's familiar. Krang says, "Know you, Namor, since the day you aided Nomad in depriving me of the all-powerful Serpent Crown, which happened in Captain America 181. There's nothing I would not do to have my revenge upon you." So this is his revenge on Namor for Namor depriving him of the Serpent Crown. And again, we have this interesting motley crew of warriors, and it really is
excuse me,
nothing more than an opportunity for fighting to take place on the page, fight for Namor to do that while Doom is off seeking out the hibernating Atlanteans in his effort to fulfill his oath and his obligation to Namor.
That's right.
For me, Brian, the coolest part of the story is the return of the trumpet horn of Atlantis, which we hadn't seen in comics at this point since issue 4 of the Fantastic Four.
See, I got to argue with that. We did see it in comics. I know the editorial note here says we haven't seen it since issue 4 of Fantastic Four, but we saw it in Defenders. And, during the whole Sergei, Red Guardian, nuclear monster in Russia storyline, which I believe came out a year before this issue.
Huh. I'm clearly off my meds today. No, you know what? All right. So let me say it was first seen in Fantastic Four #4.
Right.
But I love this thing. I love this horn. And if Namor ever appears in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I want this horn to play a part because it summons up gigantic ancient creatures from the depths that existed before, according to this, before there were even oceans.
Right.
And basically, these giant creatures, in this case, one particular enormous behemoth, is summoned up, and all it wants to do is destroy the person who blew the horn.
Exactly.
And why does it want to do that, Brian? Do you know?
I don't know. I know that this is the same exact monster that Namor summons in that issue of Defenders.
Well, it wants to do that because it's mad that you woke it up. So I love this. I love the fact that this monster's entire modus operandi is you blow the horn and it gets pissed because you woke it up and it comes to try to destroy you and anything in its path. I feel like that's a teenage girl right there, or teenage boy. I shouldn't be. As a father of a daughter, I'm saying that. But anyway.
Well, while the monster is waking up and laying waste, Doom keeps his word. Honor is fulfilled. He restores the Atlanteans. Good old Lord Vashti, supporting character from the Submariner, going all the way back to the Golden Age. He asks, "Do we have you to thank for restoring us to the halls of the living?" And Doom says, "Yes, you have Doom to thank."
But then he does the right thing, and he says, "But hear me, your prince fights for the realm alone." So not only has he fulfilled his honor and his vow, he tells them, listen, you better hurry and go help Namor out because things are pretty bad.
Yep.
So I really like that. And then, Brian, I hope, and I'm certain that you will show this splash page.
Oh, absolutely. I just saved it as we're talking about it.
Yeah, it needs to be shown. That's amazing. Yeah, and we have the fight continues. Namor is thrilled because as he's being, he is winning, of course.
Right.
But he also has this giant behemoth to deal with. But then his Atlanteans are attacking for the Avenging Sun and Atlantis, and Namor is happy for once in his godforsaken life.
That's right. So the Atlanteans turn the tide against the invaders, or the occupiers, I should say. Namor swims really fast in a circle and makes a funnel around the monster.
This is sort of like the Flash solving things in similar fashion. I didn't know Namor could create a funnel of that power. He could have solved a lot of other problems by doing that in the past, but okay.
But then, Krang is nowhere to be found. And suddenly he appears, and he is pissed off at Dr. Doom and challenges him to a sword fight.
As you do. Yes. So Warlord Krang and Dr. Doom have a sword fight in Atlantis beneath the ocean. And the only thing we're missing here is the Shroud. I just don't. Okay. And by the way, Doom, even though he's been challenged by Warlord Krang and he defeats Warlord Krang, you think that he's actually going to kill Warlord Krang, but of course it's Bronze Age comics. And even though Dr. Doom is a supervillain, he's only struck Warlord Krang with a neuroshock sword.
That's right. That's right. So, he's going to leave him alive so that he can face Namor and answer for his crimes.
Yep. There you go. Well, Namor and Doom have their sad farewell. Their love-hate bromance is at an end.
Yep.
Doom has fulfilled his promises. But I like this. And what of you, Namor? Have you no words of gratitude? and what is Namor's reply, Brian?
Wait, let me get back to that page because he says, no, you did as you did because of a bargain struck between us. Doom says, well, the bargain's done. It is your wish that I depart quietly? Very well, our alliance is ended.
So basically, after all of this, Doom's like, you're not even going to say thank you? And Namor's like, fuck you. That's my thank you.
We get a nice thing here. Doom is looking at Namor's subjects who are praising him and loving him, and he's thinking about his relationship with his own subjects. And he says, he thinks, while he derives his power from strength and an iron will, Namor derives his power from his people, their trust and their faith and their love in him. And Doom says he does not understand such strength, but he cannot deny its power.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why the Submariner is often perceived as a hero and Dr. Doom is often perceived as a villain.
Exactly.
There we go.
And there we go. That's the end of this week's show. Now, we want to remind folks, issue 13, we have already covered on Defenders Dialogue. Back when we read through the Champions, that was a crossover issue with Magneto. So we're not going to cover that next week. And issue 14 is a reprint, Silver Age reprint that we're not going to cover either. So next week will be our final supervillain team-up episode, and that will cover issues 16 and 17. There's no Dr. Doom. There's no Namor. There's no Shroud. But there is the Red Skull, and it's called Supervillain Team-Up. So there's another villain, the villain of all villains, that he doesn't team up with.
And once again, I think certain people are going to be so happy when we're done with this run of episodes, because once we start talking about Man-Thing, we won't be talking about punching Nazis much. Because if you thought we've talked about punching Nazis so far, wait until next week.
That's right. That's right. All right, folks, if you enjoyed this episode, we really, really appreciate it. It is Matt Wilderson who makes us sound so good each week, even though we're recording this on Skype. It would really be awesome if you purchased one of his books as a way of saying thank you. Just go to Amazon.com, type in Matt Wilderson. His books will pop up. That would be great. If you contact him on social media, he'll actually sign one for you and mail it to you in the mail, so you can support him that way. Of course, if you enjoy Defenders Dialogue, if you're listening to us on Apple and you want to leave us a review or 5 stars, that would be great. Same thing on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening to us. We really appreciate that. Chris, anything you want to plug? We haven't plugged anything of our own for a while.
I don't have a new book coming out till December. I guess what I'll plug, Brian, is if you haven't read the series Baltimore that I co-created with Mike Mignola and co-wrote with Mike Mignola, it is collected in 2 fat omnibuses, whatever. And I freaking love that comic. And what's great is with those 2 fat books, you get the whole story. So we have Lady Baltimore coming next year. But in the meantime, I encourage people to read Baltimore.
Well, you know what? Then I will plug an omnibuy too, because this week, as this episode is airing, I have a new omnibus out from Antarctic Press. It collects all 50 issues of my creator-owned series, The Last Zombie, in a nice bound hardcover. And if you order it from your comic book store, you're getting it signed by me because I pre-signed all of them before they went to Diamond. Yeah. So, when they ship from the Diamond Warehouse, they are shipping signed by myself and the series' primary artist.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I thought so.
All right. Well, good talking to you, sir.
Good talking to you, sir. Excelsior?
Excelsior.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks.
Defenders Dialogue is a production of the Brian Keene Radio Network. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Chrisopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com. If you enjoyed this show, you might enjoy our other podcasts, The Horror Show with Brian Keene, Cosmic Shenanigans, and Grindcast. To advertise on Defenders Dialogue, visit briankeene.com and click Podcasts.